I don't want to be holier than the various popes here on the panel on their various issues, so I'm going to defer to my colleagues on the Rapid Protection Force, on the arms embargo, and on the tribunal, all of which I support very strongly. But I want to focus in on my remarks on two things that I think are the most essential to countering genocide or mass atrocities or other mass atrocities in South Sudan in the coming months. First, a major new diplomatic initiative, and second, the kind of leverage that would give a major new diplomatic initiative a chance. And before I dive into these points, I want to make a glass half full observation, because we don't want to walk out of here just totally broken by the analysis. Recently, I was able to, along with my partners in the Century that we've created recently, have separate meetings with President Obama, with Vice President Biden, Secretary Kerry, Secretary Jack Lew at Treasury, and of course, National Security Advisor Rice. And all of them are very knowledgeable about South Sudan, surprisingly so into the details, all very seized with the urgency of the moment, all looking for ideas and debating these possibilities, all ready to consider doing more. It's not that they aren't paying attention, they're not interested. That's not the problem. It's what do you do in this very, very difficult situation, and where do you create the leverage for your actions to have impact. So it's in that spirit I make my proposals. I think it's a symbol, really, of how broken the international response system is to mass atrocity, that after nearly 3 years of fratricidal war, flashing neon warnings, of impending genocide by normally very circumspect UN officials. Despite all that, there's no legitimate, no comprehensive ongoing forum, as we were talking about earlier, or mechanism to air the grievances and to catalog the demands of the various warring parties and their proxy militias in South Sudan. As Peyton said, the peace agreement basically is dead, and the peace process basically is lifeless. What is needed is something to dramatically shake up the deadly status quo and the inertia that is compelling the parties towards greater escalation. This requires a major new diplomatic initiative, whether we like it or not, whether the timing is the worst it could possibly be, with some fresh faces at a very senior level to divert some of the energies that are now focused solely in South Sudan on war, and instead focus them on possible solutions, divert energy to the negotiating process. There's not unprecedented, that protagonists don't want to meet. And it's not unprecedented that they say they don't want to negotiate further. In my own experience in the Ethiopia-Eritrea war, which at the time was the deadliest war in the world, not some minor footnote in history to the people in those two countries. The two parties, the two presidents, leaders, president and prime minister, never met for 2.5 years of war. They never spoke, okay? I was part of the African Union and U.S. mediation team that for 2.5 years, 14 hours a day minimum, shuttled between these parties, conducted proximity talks, and pressed, pushed, and cajoled them to stop fighting until they finally signed a ceasefire. This idea that Riek and Salva have to meet to work things out is just not correct. It's inadequate. It certainly just simply isn't sufficient to move the process forward. Now, what mechanism? That's a million-dollar question, and I'm sure everyone in this room has different views. But I still see the United States, even in this transitional moment, even with all the uncertainty that comes January 21st, I still see the United States as a major player in all this. President Obama, I believe right now, should name a very senior, high-level, ad hoc representative. Worry about the terminology later. Sorry, there's already an envoy. But he's got to shake it up and send someone new. Now, when President Clinton saw the Ethiopia-Eritrea war break out, he sent his former National Security Advisor, Tony Lake. That's the kind of level that we need to see there, and to deploy to the region till the end of his administration. Someone with bipartisan credibility would retain the possibility of staying on into the new administration. You work with the British, the Norwegians, the Troika, and with the IGAD states to create a new dynamic at the negotiating table. Heck, starting out, it's going to look bleak. Everybody's like, what is the United States doing? Why are they trying to do this? There's no path to peace and all that stuff. You create it. effective engagement can alter calculations, and it can spur diplomatic activity, new diplomatic activity in the region. The point is that business as usual, which we got right now, unbelievably, despite all the warnings that Peyton and Justin have just now summarized for us, and Cameron, the point is that business, oh, I'll try harder.
Sorry, guys. They liked what you were saying, so they couldn't help themselves.
I was watching you rub your eyes earlier. I knew it was coming, buddy. Don't worry. The point is that business as usual on the diplomatic front condemns the peace to almost certain escalation. We need to alter the trajectory. So that's one side of the coin, a diplomatic surge. Now, what's the other side? The other side is we got to create the leverage to support that diplomacy, to alter the cost-benefit calculations of people who are willing to commit mass atrocities to gain or stay in power. And say that again. How do you change the cost-benefit calculations of people willing to commit genocide or mass atrocities to maintain power or to gain it? First, I'll tell you what doesn't produce leverage for political compromise, sadly, but it's most of the tools in the toolbox we usually use. Number one, naming and shaming, that they're beyond it. Number two, threats of consequence. So we counted up in September, we stopped counting, by the way, but as of September, we counted around 65 specific times where high-level officials, mostly U.S., but all around the world, threatened specific consequences, but then failed to take meaningful actions. Paper tiger. Third, satellite imagery. Unfortunately, we have a long experience in this. We had this Satellite Sentinel project Akshay and I worked on very, very hard for many years. It exposed very specific crimes, connected the dots. As if it's not, though, connected to action, it's ignored. It's discounted. Fourth, sadly, UN Security Council resolutions that foreshadow possible consequences, possible future action, but don't actually impose them. They don't take that seriously anymore. I think we all know that. Fifth, as I said already, business as usual, diplomatic demarches, totally discounted at this point. Occasional phone calls from high-level people, this kind of thing. They just know it's coming. They know it's part of the drill. Everybody has to do it. Everybody goes, yes, thank you, or I'll try harder, hang up. Sixth, human rights commissions and missions. Very, very important to do to inform the world. The great journalism that we've seen, the UN panel that Peyton is part of, all these things are critically important. But again, if disconnected to action, they do not impact the calculations of those willing to commit genocide and mass atrocities to stay in power again. So where then are the vulnerabilities? Where are the pressure points that could actually alter the calculations and affect the behaviors of these folks on the ground? Well, I think, and our conclusion is, after a lot of study of this, the most potent vulnerabilities result from the illicit money flows, the corruption, and the assets abroad that the leaders who are orchestrating these atrocities are responsible for. The decision makers in South Sudan's war do not keep their money under their mattresses. They offshore it and they launder it in real estate, in companies, and in bank accounts. Because the U.S. dollar is the currency of choice for the corrupt dealings of South Sudanese leaders and rebels, the U.S. government has jurisdiction. And if crimes are committed, laundering the proceeds of corruption with those dollars, the U.S. can act. Because of enforcement actions against banks over Iran, over North Korea, and Sudan, and other jurisdictions of concern, banks increasingly see it in their self-interest to comply with these post-9/11 policy tools of financial pressure that simply didn't exist 10 years ago. The policy cocktail of choice, and this is very, very interesting to me. I did not know, and I'm a political guy. I work on the political side of things, not the financial and economic side as much. The policy cocktail of choice, when the United States gets serious about an issue internationally, for example, counterterrorism, countering nuclear proliferation, countering organized crime, is the combination, and here it is, of anti-money laundering measures with highly targeted sanctions against networks, not just against a few individuals, which is the usual thing we pull out every time there's a crisis. So here's my question to leave you with. If these policy tools are good enough for countering terrorism, why not for countering genocide?